ହେଲା ତ କଣ ଏମିତି ହଉଛି?
ଆପଣ ସାର୍ ଅଛନ୍ତି ସାର୍, ଆପଣ ଭିଜିବଲ୍ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ଅଡିଓ ବି ଆସୁଛି।
ଏଇମାନଙ୍କର କାଇଁ ଆଉଛି ଏମିତି? ये चार्टा कहीं रहा पिक्चर कहीं एमती रहा पटोड़ा स्टॉप वीडियो देखो हाँ स्टॉप वीडियो कहीं मारियो तो कौन एमती होची सा होची कौन देता आवाज आउची साउंड बेसी जे ना
Hello everyone. Everyone is requested to student participants are requested to mute their audio and also make their videos off. We can start in 5 minutes. So it's almost 3:55 and we'll be exactly beginning the session from 4 p.m. onwards. Thank you. Hello, Dr. Ritu. Good afternoon, and I hope celebrated the 75th Independence Day of India. I hope Hello, Dr. Ritu. I think I'm audible to you, right?
Yes, but your voice is a bit low. Am I audible to you clearly, Dr. Das?
Yes, you're clearly audible to me.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Thank you.
I'm muting it now. So if there's a
I think it will be better for you if you can plug in your earphone so that your voice would be more clearer. Yeah.
इराड मु एमती रखी इराड मु एमती रखी एटा एमती काई होची एमान तो अरे ये कौन एमती होची कौन एपटू हेगला देखिन मोर कहीं मोर आउट बंद कर दे बंद कर दे कबाट मोर कहीं एमती होची मोर देखले कहीं एमती होची एमती होची फुट कौन होची फुट कौन होची
Hello, dear participants, everyone, and dear principal, sir. It's 2 minutes to 4 o'clock. We are I'll take 2 minutes for we can start. So, thank you. I assume Dr. Roy has connected with us.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see you. Thank you, Dr. Roy. I think you can plug in your earphones so that your voice would be better audible to us, and then you can come closer to the screen so that we can see you properly. I think you are sitting far away from the screen, so come a bit closer to the screen, and then you can also plug in your audio so that you'll be clearly audible. plug in your earplugs so that you'll be clearly audible. Thank you. I request all the participants to remain muted so that there'll be no voice rupture and interferences. And if they wish, or if they are having a stable internet connection, they can switch on their video so that we can see you all. Thank you. So 3 of our panelists are already with us. Dr. Roy, Dr. Panda, and Dr. Neetu are amongst us. So,
Am I audible now?
yes, Dr. Roy, you are audible, but your voice is a bit cracky. So, yeah. So please speak again so that I can
Hello,
take your
check.
audio.
Hello, check. Hello, check.
Yeah. Yes, you're audible. Yes. Thank you.
Your voice is rather coming across very like bombastically. So my voice was cracking, but your voice was high pitch.
Okay.
You know, today is a very, I would say that it's a very timely day for this kind of discussion. Why I would say, because the topic is about epidemics. And we are discussing polity, health, and those other aspects.
Right.
And from last, like yesterday, I'm having this power cut and all that issue. So every time
You're
I'm
having
trying,
power cut in the national capital of India.
not only national capital, I stay in one of the poshest colony of the national capital. Just imagine, like I stay in one of the most privileged colonies in Delhi, and there I'm having this kind of problem. And Upar se, Subha se, because of this, like I prepared a good PPT because Dr. Dash had instructed me, but that, because my computer crashed because of this sudden power cut, it just got boom, and my computer again, it went into this debuff mode, and I could not retrieve it. Then again, just a week 15 minutes pehle, there was a full power cut, and I was like, oh my god, now I won't be even able to participate. And thankfully, and I because there was power cut, I was not able to even charge my phone properly, because of which there was only
in this situation, how can we say India is shining?
yeah, 40% power tha in my phone.
You're
And
sitting
then
next to the CMO, right?
yeah, just imagine, like I stay in South Delhi, and there is this power cut की वजह से my phone was also not charged. I was not even thinking कि अभी 3 घंटे में कैसे phone पे survive करूँगी with that small amount of charge. So I am saying that this is so timely because we are discussing about pandemic, and one of the participant is the victim of the.
Indeed a pandemic situation. It is indeed a pandemic situation at the right moment. On the afternoon of the 75th Independence Day. Okay. That's
yes, actually today is the Independence Day.
Students and enthusiasts who have been connected with us from throughout the state and maybe from other places of India. So yeah, anyways. So I can see Dr. Divyaranjan Pandai. Yes.
Am I audible? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you are clearly audible. You can say something.
Yeah, I was hearing to what ma'am Dr. Roy was saying in Delhi, so much of power cut, that's hilarious.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so I think we should start now because all our panelists are with us, and I would request Dr. Neetu to switch on her video so that we can see her, and all are requested to remain muted so that there will be no audio interferences, and then we can start. So let's consider we are going to start in a minute from now onward.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I just could not come up with a PPT, so I will have a more roundup overview kind of, and then we can discuss.
Okay, fine. It's okay. So I request our admin of this webinar, Mr. Sarthak, so that he can respond with his audio that everything is fine and being recorded, everything is in proper order so that we can start. So admin, Mr. Sarthak, you can respond with your audio.
Yeah, everything is good. Good to go.
Thank you so much. Let's start the proceedings now officially. It's being recorded. With your kind permission, of our principal, sir, Dr. Bijaya Kumar Maharana, and everyone with us, the panelists and everyone. I am going to officially start the proceeding in an informal way. So good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I would like to congratulate all of you being the proud citizens of India on the 75th Independence Day of India. And then I call it the process of the brightest process of decolonialization when we are celebrating it in a very great way, sitting at the southern extreme point of Asia. And then the topic of today's deliberation. I have clearly set the agenda that I'll be going to justify you why this topic, and then I'll request our principal sir to officially open the dialogue. So, global epidemics and economics. As we all know that since some time, maybe for around 2 years, we are going through a very critical phase, not only at the regional or the bottom order, but at the highest orders of administration or machinery of the most developed states. We are functioning in a way which is putting a mask on our face, socially or physically away from each other. And thanks to this digital connectivity, we are able to communicate.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I welcome and congratulate everyone on this opportune moment of open air. Yeah, we celebrate the 75th Independence Day of the nation today. I am indeed glad that Department of Political Science has organizing an open air on a topic of relevance as well as future essence, that is global epidemics and aftermath, the impact on polity, health, and education. I heartily welcome three of our esteemed speakers for today. Here, Dr. Angan talking on polity, Dr. Vijayaranjan Panda, being a doctor talking on health, and Dr. Kumar being an eminent academician talking on impact of education. I strongly believe we are going to learn a lot. I am encouraging all my dear colleagues and students to participate in the for the next hour and witness their ideas by showing ideas and asking questions. Ultimately, I am delighted to congratulate Dr. Hemant and Ms. Gayatri Pradhan for organizing their webinar. Being the head of the institution, I declare the webinar open and shifting the further proceedings to organize to Dr. Hemant. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is a critical kind of noise interruption, so I request everyone to mute themselves. I request everyone to switch off their audio so that we can have a clear discussion. Because the audio interference is so much that so many participants, despite of live streaming the event on YouTube, we have so many participants on Zoom. So there is a critical kind of audio interference. We're unable to hear each other properly. I request everyone, take a break of around 10-15 seconds. Sorry for that, but everyone is requested to switch off their audio, or maybe the admin is requested to mute everyone. Requested everyone so that once any speaker speaks, he can unmute the speaker. Otherwise, he is requested to mute absolutely everyone. So I hope I am clearly audible. Is it? Okay, good to go. Thank you. So anyways, that was our principal, sir, Dr. B.K. Maharana. He is a assistant professor in Odia literature, and we're so glad that he gave us the go ahead. And then we have so many well wishers from the university, and then some of the people called me today morning from the higher education department of Odisha, and they said me that it's a very opportune moment, as Dr. Roy was saying me or speaking to all of us since last 5 minutes, that sitting next to the PMO, and she's having a power cut interruption since morning, and we are celebrating an Independence Day. So this is the best time to talk about a pandemic. So anyways, I congratulate everyone, every participant here, and then I also heartily welcome all the panelists, all the distinguished panelists. Dr. Roy, she will be speaking on the theme of polity, and then our second speaker, Dr. Panda, he is a health professional, he's a doctor by profession, and then he will be talking on the theme of health. And then ultimately, we are proud to have Dr. Neetu amongst us. She will be talking on the theme of education. So I hope we are also being connected with our dear students, Mr. Alekha and Miss Khushi. So I request our first student host to give a few briefings about our first speaker, and then according to the agenda, Dr. Roy can start her proceeding. So I request Alekh to give a brief introduction about our first speaker, Dr. Roy. Alekh, are you there with us? You can start with your audio and video so that we can see you as well as we can listen you properly. Mr. Alekh Prasad. He's an honors student of political science, and he's going to give an intro or the profile of Dr. Roy. Alekh, the floor is yours. Alekh Prasad, where are you? I hope you are there. Yes. Yeah, please start.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to impress upon the credentials of our first panelist of today's national webinar. We are indeed privileged to receive amongst us Dr. Miss Angana Guha as an expert of polity for today's webinar, and hope to learn a lot from her insights on the topic. Dr. Miss Angana Guha is a fellow at Delhi Policy Group, New Delhi, India. Her research interests pertain to various dimensions of international relation theory, Indian foreign policy, India's relations with China, Geo-Pacific region, and conventional and non-conventional threats of the region. She is the recipient of prestigious Sinan Bank Dream Foundation Fellowship from Sinan Bank International Corporation in the year 2013. Dr. Roy holds a doctoral degree from the Development of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi. Her PhD thesis deals with South Korea's New Asia Initiative, Search for Regional Power Status. She has obtained her MPhil degree specializing in foreign policy from the coveted Institute of Foreign Studies, University of Kolkata. Her MPhil research work related to non-conventional threats of Indian Ocean region. Dr. Roy holds a master's degree in the international relations from Jadavpur University and bachelor's degree with political science major from Presidency University, Kolkata. She has previously worked as an assistant professor in institution affiliated to the University of Kolkata and Kalyani University in West Bengal. In addition to this, Dr. Roy has published numerous research papers and articles related to her area of expertise in journals of repute, including columns in the New York Times and its sister concern global media houses. She has presented papers in various national and international conferences across the globe. Apart from being the lead author of China Monitor, monthly journal of Delhi Policy Group, New Delhi. We are indeed grateful to Angana ma'am for accepting our invitation on a short notice and giving her kind consent to grace this webinar. I would like to now request to ma'am to present her deliberations. The digital floor is all yours now, ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. Angana, unmute yourself.
I assume, I fear Dr. Roy is not audible.
Okay,
I fear
okay.
that.
I was just saying that thank you, Alek. It was a very nice introduction, and I'm grateful to also Dr. Dash that he gave me this opportunity to be a part of this group today and share my thoughts. And we can exchange our views in the at a later period. The thing is that today I don't have a PPT. I would share my roundup overview on the theme that I've been asked to discuss about. So pandemic and polity. Uh, the first thing is that presently the world is confronting a pandemic named COVID-19. The magnitude of the pandemic is unprecedented. 21st century witnessed a number of epidemics, namely bird flu, SARS, and Ebola. So here I would want to say that COVID-19 is not the most lethal pandemic, but Ebola was more lethal, like as I have read. But the magnitude is and the scope is much bigger. Pandemics are generally seen as tests for governments as it involves diverse action plans. In the present scenario, COVID-19 has claimed millions of lives. It has led to massive unemployment, imposed state of emergency, curtailed mobility. Uh, People were put under detailed and intrusive administrative control. Elections were rescheduled. Democracies witnessed demonstrations. Allegations and counter allegations on data transparency and medical realities were raised. At the global scale, debates on major power rivalry and the trajectory of multilateralism was also discussed. At one point, the political narrative centered around authoritarianism and embattled democracy. The point is, political systems respond in different ways. In the case of COVID-19, the quality of response was based on state capacity, leadership, and social trust. The structure of polity is inclusive of various organizations. So basically, I was giving an introduction to what I was I am going to talk about, where when we talk about polity in a broader sense, we can look at from two perspectives. My entire discussion is focuses on a few aspects. The first aspect is the organizational structure of polity, where it comes legislature, executive, judiciary. But I just can't talk about the polity of all the political systems, so I will briefly touch upon India as a case study. With some references to the global, like the other countries, and then I would touch upon the briefly touch upon the emerging debates on democracy, that how with more reference to Francis Fukuyama, who had written one very coveted point he view on this entire emerging debate. And the third would be global politics, that some of the very preeminent features of how the few aspects or the few facets of global politics confront with the pandemic. So when it comes to the polity, like in the first structure, the structure of polity is inclusive of various organizational structures, as I said, that constitute the polity in whole. In the broader dimension, it is the executive, legislature, and judiciary that drives the polity with mutual checks and balances. The institutional audit or assessment in the face of a crisis is fundamental, given that pandemics are exceptional times. I like especially this sentence I wrote because I felt that this is one of the important reasons that today we are discussing pandemic from the perspective of health, from the perspective of education, from the perspective of polity. That it's an exceptional thing, it's an unprecedented thing, and we should keep on assessing and talking about it. So when it comes to, as I said, that I would briefly refer especially to India because we are Indians and we know that we have been confronting the system. So the first thing that comes is that how the executive has behaved, how the legislature has behaved, and how the judiciary in our country has behaved as the organizational structures of the polity while dealing with the issue of pandemic. The first is the executive. Now, the Indian government had, used the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897. Am I audible? Is there any question? Am I audible? Am I audible? Yeah. Yeah. So the Indian government used the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897 to address the COVID-19 emergency. The central government also used powers provided in the Disaster Management Act of 2005. So why I specially mentioned about these acts while talking about that the executive is that we didn't had any kind of uh, a relevant and modernized and adapt and updated act to deal with the pandemic. We are still we were trying to manage with the existing this constitutional acts and arrangements. The constitutional and legal framework of the management of epidemics and health emergencies has been at the forefront of discussions and debates throughout and outside of the nation since the nationwide lockdown order. The right to health is not explicitly mentioned in the Indian Constitution as the right, as is the right to education, but various judgments included the right to health as the part of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Hence, the role of government at all three levels, union, state, and local level, is crucial in providing health care to all citizens. However, health emergency is not part of the emergency provisions of Indian Constitution, as imposing a lockdown or keeping strict measures to contain the spread of disease will impact citizens' fundamental rights. There is a need to explore various constitutional methods. I'm just trying to make a point that these are either very colonial acts, which is one is EDA 1897, or one is the Disaster Management Act, where if you go and read the act, there is no mention of the word pandemic. There is a word called there are two words called grave concerns. So when the government used the Disaster Management Act, they actually applied the this grave concerns as the as the relevant clause to use it for the pandemic. And why I'm mentioning about the act specially, I will come to that. The EDA in the present form is not sufficient to face health emergencies like COVID-19, as it is silent on technical and operational mechanisms of the control and management of the epidemics. So my point, as an Indian and as an observer and as part of this entire scholar group, my point is that I feel that with all these problems which I point underline, we need a uniform national health law for for dealing with a pandemic. So I think that the government can talk about. Now, immediately after the law, what I want to talk about is the national lockdown that happened in 2020, because when the government suddenly came up with this entire shutdown plan. Now, there are two aspects to it. One aspect is that it led to a huge migrant crisis. It was hugely covered, a lot of deaths. It was really unfortunate. People had no shelter. People walked back to their villages, and on the way, people died. There was no food. So it was. We all know what happened. It was a horror story. Uh, but the why it happened was there was no legitimate debate before this happened. Why in our polity we have this executive, legislature and judiciary for mutual checks and balances. So any major discussion or decision we are taking, we need to go through a process of debate, and this was not addressed while it was a huge pandemic and it was unprecedented, and already there was a global scale of horror going on. So there was no there was no legislature debate, and so this entire decision did not go through any scrutiny, because of which we saw what was the consequence finally. And then the third aspect is that we know these monsoon sessions and all these sessions happen in the parliament for going through all these debates. So when last year, if you remember, what happened when the opposition was raising a lot of voice that ye nahi ho raha hai, like this is not happening, that is not happening. So they said that we need a 4 hour long discussion and debate timing only to discuss about the pandemic and all that. But we saw the government was unprepared. Definitely the healthcare structure, not only about India but global scale, we have seen that none of the countries were at first prepared for the pandemic. Everywhere the entire faltering and breaking healthcare system came to the forefront. So so the government kind of wanted to avoid that debate, and so the question hour ko hi hata diya, like the that question hour was not it was removed. So we saw that in 2020, which was the first wave of COVID-19, we saw that there was no proper really debate in the parliament, which should have taken place about COVID-19. And if you are in a democracy, if you are in a political system, which is the biggest democracy in the world, with second most populated country in the world, dealing with unprecedented pandemic without any debate and discussion, it was something which was not a very healthy I am not being judgmental, but I'm just seeing, like as we all are part of the system, we feel that we are in the receiving end. So whatever we receive and whatever part of the decision we are, it can go through some kind of debates and discussions. And the third part of a polity is judiciary. So judiciary mein, there are two aspects. I would say that last year, during the migrant crisis, when petitions were filed by Swami Agnivesh and also one of the MPs, Mahua Moitro and all. It is not any kind of political aspect, but I'm just saying that when those petitions were filed, so in the first case we saw Supreme Court did not wanted to interfere in the government's proceedings. And this year, when the oxygen crisis took place, then the judiciary kind of raised questions and instructed the government to be fluent and flexible with the supply of oxygens and all that. So, so we have seen that these three structures of of the polity, precisely, the executive was functioning with an act which was not updated and which was colonial. Second is the legislature was had put through the entire situation without any debate, and judiciary was not very helpful when it came to helping it. Whatever. So this was the situation in India. So there are different political systems, and different political systems behaved in the way their situation was there. Uh, so one aspect which the most important aspect of a democracy or a political system is press freedom. So I would briefly also touch upon press freedom. During this discussion, press freedom deserves attention, as there is a tendency to curtail press freedom even in democratic structure. I'm talking it about from a holistically political point of view. I'm not talking only from the point of view of India, because the entire press freedom debate was raised globally. So, Amartya Sen pointed out droughts and natural disasters may become more severe if they occur in the absence of political freedoms and independent media. Such agencies at times act as whistleblowers, compelling governments and other bodies to mobilize to mitigate material and social damage. To quote him, I would quote him, tackling a social calamity is not like fighting a war, which works best when a leader can use top down power to order everyone to do what the leader wants, with no need for consultation. In contrast, what is needed for dealing with a social calamity is participatory governance and alert public discussion. He further said this applies also to the calamity caused by a pandemic in which some may be concerned only about not getting the disease while others have to worry also about earning an income, and for those away from home as migrant workers about finding the means of getting back home. The different types of hazards from which different groups suffer have to be addressed, and this is much aided by a participatory democracy, in particular when the press is free, public discussion is unrestrained, and when governmental commands are informed by listening and consultation. In World Press Freedom Index of 2021, India features at 142. It indicates a dramatic deterioration in people's access to information and an increase in obstacles to news coverage. I would just cite two instances. One is
I guess there is some network issue. Hello.
I also hope the same. I think she will be reconnecting with us. Maybe. So I assume she will get connected with us anyway. Any references, Mr. Admin?
Yes.
I hope Dr. Roy's video stopped. I think the process is still on, but her video stopped, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I assume she may be she may got disconnected and she may be trying to come.
There might be network issue.
Go a step further and say that live streaming of this session when she's so outspoken is not healthy enough in this regime, I suppose. Like on a lighter note, more seriously.
Okay. So I think it's better to not force everyone to wait, and then we can switch to the next segment. Maybe after every speaker concludes their deliberations, Dr. Roy can speak again for 5 minutes, maybe, if she has to conclude her approach. So I should thank Dr. Roy for talking for about 10 minutes till now, and then
wait.
She has joined.
Wait.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. There was a power cut. Yeah, I will kind of, I will reduce it. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
You came back from the pandemic situation. Okay. Anyway,
I'm really sorry. Look, this is a pandemic situation. Please consider me. Please, I'm really sorry.
Okay. Anyway, you have time to. You can speak for about 5 or 7 minutes.
Yes. I'm really sorry. There was a power cut, so I had to shift the room, and I'm talking from my phone right now, and I'm just.
I assume how the Mann Ki Baat process is being live telecasted so vividly and with so much strong network connectivity. If you are
because it is telepathic, and here the citizens of the country.
I guess we are being a bit more critical against this present government.
No, yeah, we are not being critical. We are voicing what we feel like. I think that is allowed in a democracy.
Dr. Roy, please continue. Yes.
So the thing is that I was talking about the structures of the different structures of a polity, and on a global scale, every country had their own way of dealing with it. So when it comes to, so immediately after the polity, I would talk about, we saw that we had some very effective, like the countries with, good facilities like South Korea, Japan, they kind of managed it very well. We also saw that that United States is doing it. And when, it exploded in Europe after a while, Germany, Italy, France, everybody, kind of managed it well. So that is completely a discussion of logistics, that which country managed the logistics well and which country kind of try to adjust with the healthcare structure well. But beyond that, because we are talking about the polity, the most important emerging debate about pandemic was that number one was about the battle, the trend of democracy, the trajectory of democracy, and second was the trajectory of international order. So when it comes to the trajectory of democracy, which is an ideal political system, and major political majority of the political system. So there we saw that how isolationism, nationalism, all that kind of started coming to forefront, because the government has to be powerful. The government kind of was the most important decision making body, even if at that point things were not working at it in the best way. But it was the people started looking forward to the government as the most important and necessary agency to deal with a pandemic, because of which 2020 was again the most is an year where people turned out the most in their in elections, because they, for them, choosing a leader, getting connected to the political debates and the what is going on around was very important, and was of a priority and primary agenda. So we saw that in that way, though within democracies there were governments, populist governments or governments, they were though they were imposing a lot of restrictions, they were not everybody was up to the mark in managing the crisis. But people had, at the first stage, in the first wave, we saw that people were developing a lot of trust factor towards the government. In the second wave, when it came to India with the oxygen crisis and all, we saw that there was a lot of ranting, or a lot of this expression of frustration among the people about the not the non-availability of facilities and the faltering healthcare structure, the not being able to cope with the numbers and all that. So with that, Francis Fukuyama pointed out that this rise of the control of the government is one kind of is a facet of fascism. I'm not endorsing what he's saying. I'm just saying that there is an emerging debate from the in the political structure, that there is this is a trait, this is a facet of the rising fascism, which is preparing the ground for liberal democracies, because it is laying bare, or it is exposing the governments and their inadequacies about controlling the public utilities, about their failed take on on creating infrastructures for which people were suffering. So these are this is an emerging debate, which was not only mentioned by Francis Fukuyama, but if you check and you go through the literatures in the global newspapers, in the majority of the think tanks, it was a very major point of discussion about the rise of authoritarianism trends and the embattled democracy leading way to liberal democracies. And in fact, countries like Uganda, El Salvador, Philippines, then Hungary, they had used their emergency powers. Hello, am I audible? They were using their emergency powers to give more power to the government so that they can. And also one important factor is that in politics, in nationalist politics, whenever you have there are tensions inside the boundaries or the sovereign country, there is a strategy of creating enemies outside, a common an external enemy to unite people. So in that case, we saw how China had been trying to use that in its favor, and doing, trying to also use that LSE standoff in their favor. And the last point I will come to is the international order, the impact in international order, where hello. Uh, Yeah, so we have seen, I would just wrap up now. The first thing is the rise of the regional powers, that how the regional powers were, the regional powers like Australia, New Zealand, they were helping the Indian Ocean islands like Papua New Guinea and all that. Then Japan, China, they were helping not only the countries nearby Central Asia and West Asia, but also across the world. And then India, like before second wave, it kind of did very well with the vaccine diplomacy. It reached out to other countries. It supplied a lot of these medical stuff. But one political aspect of this vaccine diplomacy or disease diplomacy was that countries used it for a strategic purpose. Like, I will just give two examples. In case of China has created this, China definitely wants to intrude and make its presence more prominent in South Asia, in the India's neighborhood. So they have created an alternative. They are saying that it's an Himalayan Cod. There is an emerging thought. There is a Himalayan Cod, which is alternative to Cod. So where they are engaging all the South Asian countries to to talk about connectivity, to talk about healthcare and all that. And second is, if you remember, Taiwan said that China had pressurized Paraguay that we will help you with the vaccines and medical supplies, but you have to sever ties with Taiwan. So we have also seen that part, that how vaccine diplomacy actually became a part of the geopolitics and the strategy. Then there is this rise of nationalism, which I've already talked about. One important aspect which I would talk and end my discussion is multilateralism. We have seen that multilateralism, there are two aspects to multilateralism. One is that multilateralism and major power rivalry. We have seen that how in the first half of the pandemic there was Trump. In the second half of the pandemic there is Biden, but both are very hawkish and both have been very anti-China. So there has been a very prominent major power rivalry, which is one of the features of the pandemic, because China has been using its BRI and connectivity and all its all that as a part of its reaching out thing. And US has now come up with B3W, which is building better future project. So B3W, so that is one aspect of it. And second is multilateralism. With pandemic, we have seen that countries have to help each other. So definitely multilateralism is the future of pandemic. It has definitely strengthened multilateralism, but multilateralism had a very, very critical, we saw a very critical feature of multilateralism when whose association with China was exposed. We saw how Tedros kind of had sat upon the entire information of the pandemic, and it never intimidated others on time, because of which it had spread. But we are not only um, uh, kind of blaming who, but I'm saying that that United Nations can be has to reform a lot, has to become more vocal, at least from healthcare perspective. And finally, They also inducted China into the human rights, as a member of the human rights, panel, where China is one of the most called out, human rights abuser country in the world. So with that, I would just end saying that there is a lot of debate going on, especially on the, two aspects of polity. One on the domestic aspect about the political system, that the emerging political system, that how fascism is getting aligned with democracies, and there is this authoritarian trends rising, which might create ground for future, future protests and all that, and lead to liberal democracies, which is a assumption of Francis Fukuyama. Second is international order, where we are seeing major power rivalry. We are seeing middle power rising. We are seeing disease diplomacy or vaccine diplomacy, and we are seeing a rising multilateralism, which has of multiple aspects. So with that, I would end my overview on polity. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Roy, for your deliberations for about 20 minutes and then an interruption of 1 minute, which is clearly reflective of the pandemic we are talking about. So jotting down some points, what you spoke about, maybe for 30 to 40 seconds, then I'll request our student, Ms. Khushi Swarnakar, to introduce our next guest, and then the proceedings will move on. So when you talked about the trajectory of democracy versus trajectory of internationalism, that was quite fascinating on my part, because being a scholar of international relations for some time, and then with a different trajectory of researching on renewable energy, I found the concept of vaccine diplomacy on part of India. Initially, I was quite appreciative of the move, and then when people started becoming vocal on social media that bring back our vaccines, when the deficiency effect started, and then the government changed its decision, then I can certainly correlate it with the rise of authoritarianism trends you're talking about, and then how the authoritarian trends quite clashed with the liberal democratic norms which are boasting of today, celebrating the 75th Independence Day, and how the liberal democratic norms are now really on a situation of stalemate. And then the UN has to be more vocal, as you spoke about the contentious decisions of WHO, and then some of the decisions or the reports of WHO being contested by some developed states, and then how developing countries and underdeveloped state stayed at a flux situation. What to do next, they had no idea. And then majority of the states are having their stockpile of vaccines for 3 or 4 times of their accumulated populations, and then some of the states are still still not able to get vaccine of around 5 to 10% of their population. So this disparity could be a vibrant reflection of the different trajectories or the real political or real polity situation of pandemic we're dealing with. These are the points that I jotted out from your talk, Dr. Roy. So thank you so much. I'm quite grateful that despite of all the adverse situations in a physical sense,
we won the pandemic. We won the pandemic.
You won the pandemic. Okay, through you. That's the voice of a woman sitting in New Delhi and talking about that we won. So yeah. So all the movements and all the kind of sacrifices on the part of women, we are quite appreciative of that. And specifically in a pandemic situation, some women created bright examples all across the globe. Thinking about the recent switch in the leadership of Bretton Woods institutions, Indian head of IMF, and then Geeta Gopinathan talking about vaccine diplomacy, and initially appreciative, and then she stopped talking about. So this is quite a bright example of authoritarian trends being reflected on the global phase. And then now I would like to request our dear student, a quite vibrant student in the classes, now Ms. Khushi Swarnakar. She is going to introduce our next panelist, Dr. Divyaranjan Panda. So Khushi, I think you are visible now. So please switch on your audio, and then you can introduce Dr. Panda. Thank you. Over to you, Khushi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to deliberate on the credentials of our second panelist of today's national webinar. We are indeed privileged to receive amongst us Dr. Divya Ranjan Panda as an expert of health for today's webinar, and hope to learn a lot from his practical experiences in the health sector and medicinal doctoral studies as well. On the outset, I would like to congratulate and express our deepest gratitude to Dr. Panda for being a frontline COVID warrior and serving the needs of people at the time of unprecedented global health crisis, struggling his own life towards the cause of humanity and selfless service. Professionally, Dr. Panda holds a MBBS degree from the Coveted Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, India. He has recently been designated as an assistant surgeon by Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of Odisha in the Odisha Public Service Commission selection process. His professional areas of interest are medicine and surgery. Apart from his service domain, he bears keen interest in music and has several popular music videos in his city in collaboration with some prominent Odia singers of repute. He was also the head of Alexa Committee, the BHU platform of music and culture, an avid debater and quizzing enthusiast. During his educational days, he has been adjudged with several state-level prizes in this sphere. We are indeed grateful to Divya Ranjan sir for accepting our invitation despite of his professional engagements and gracing us with his presence today on this digital gathering. I would like to request Dr. Divya Ranjan sir to present his deliberations. The digital string is shifted to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. I am really thankful to this Department of Political Sciences, Mdc Deogarh, Sambalpur University for conducting such a wonderful webinar. It is such a vibrant platform. And I was just listening to Dr. Royce. He gave her views on polity. It was really thought-provoking. There are certain points which I would like to draw that certain countries that ma'am said that they managed this COVID crisis better, like Japan or US. Somewhere or the other, the main theme on their management was human behavior, which I will deal in my subsequent lecture. And the thing is that our healthcare system crashed. Yes, that is true. But somewhere or the other, our doctors are really brave. And I personally salute all my friends, my seniors, my juniors, those who have fought valiantly in this COVID situation. COVID crisis, like working in a COVID ward, it is really hectic and quite tense situation. So our doctors are really the best in the whole world. The healthcare system is crashing down. So somewhere or the other, it is political backup or something. I won't go into the details. Okay, like starting my presentation, I would focus on certain concepts. Like when we understand those concepts, we can deliberately say what are the mistakes or what are the impact actually. See, there are three terms like endemic, epidemic, and pandemic. Endemic means there is continuous presence of a disease in a population. Okay, and epidemic means when a certain disease, the number of cases are clearly in excess of the normal expectancy. And pandemic means it is going a country to country spread. Okay, now what is this epidemic? What is this normal expectancy? Like you see, if there is occurrence of a new disease, okay, or the reoccurrence of an older disease, like polio strain 2. There are 3 strains of polio, polio 1, 2, and 3. Polio strain 2 has been eradicated from India on 20th September 2015. If even one case of polio strain 2 is detected in India, then that will be called as epidemic. Okay, now you see this COVID-19, it was not expected. Okay, so the cases are clearly in excess of the normal expectancy. Hence, it is an epidemic. And endemic means, you see, when we are working in OPD setup in BHU in Banaras, when patient comes with complaints of fever, malaise or fatigue, we first diagnose, we keep as a differential diagnosis the Kala-Azar to be the first differential diagnosis. Then we investigate on the platelet count, the hepatosplenomegaly, we see the RK39 antigen test. And similarly, if the patient comes with fever, malaise, and fatigue, in Odisha, we think about malaria. And in Bangalore, we think about dengue. Okay, so it is a quite funny thing. Our professors used to say that whenever patient comes with complaint of fever, the doctor gets the fever. Okay, because it is such a prodromal symptom that like it is very much non-specific. A lot of diseases manifest with fever. Okay, so the endemicity has to be taken into account. Like Dr. Roy said, there are national health policies. Yes, that is required, but the endemicity is also needed to be taken into consideration. Else, we cannot tackle the local diseases. Okay, and talking about COVID-19, COVID-19 is a propagated form of epidemic. Like epidemic can be of various forms. You see, there can be point source single exposure epidemic or point source multiple exposure epidemic. But this is a multiple source multiple exposure epidemic. It will have a log phase, a plateau phase, and a decline phase. Okay. So this COVID-19 is basically a single-stranded positive sense mRNA virus. Okay. These technical terms are needed actually because we can jot out lot of things from this technical aspect. See, mRNA as a structure is a bit unstable form than the DNA. Okay, DNA is a bit stabler form, and this RNA, these are a bit unstable. I'm not telling it is completely unstable, but it is a bit unstable. So they per se, they have tendency to show a more number of strains. Okay, and they have a tendency to mutate a lot. Hence, we have lot of strains of COVID-19. Therefore, lot of waves are seen. And since it is multiple exposure, multiple sources, we are seeing a propagated form of epidemic. Okay. Now, talking about pandemic, what impact it has on the health sector, like ma'am talked about the political sector, I will jot down the important aspects of the health sector. See, for the first time, pandemic was noticed in 430 BC in Athens, when Athenians were laying the siege on Ethiopia, Libya, and Egypt in 430 BC. The similar symptoms that I talked about now few minutes ago, fever, sore throat, malaise, fatigue, joint pain, these all are the prodromal symptoms. And normally the epidemics come in this way only. You see Ebola, you see Marburg or Nipah or Zika, anything you see, basically the prodromal symptoms are these only. Even during 430 BC in Athens, whatever happened, then the famous Marcus Aurelius of 180 AD from Roman Empire, who died from Antonine plague. Okay, and if we take into consideration 11th century, the leprosy epidemic actually, why this is needed, the historical aspect, because from that we know that various changes in the health sector was made. When leprosy came as epidemic, lot of hospitals were set up taking into consideration the active cases of the leprosy, and a lot of money was invested in the leprosy research. If we talk about 1800, the cholera pandemic, many must have known about Jon Snow, the character from Game of Thrones. But this Jon Snow I am talking about is the father of epidemiology, who pointed out that cholera epidemic in 1800 in London was due to the hand pumps in the London. Okay, the hand pumps, there were impure water actually. And he just suggested two things: to use hand pumps less and to boil water. See, these are small observational things with the scientists too. And cholera is termed as the father of public health, because from that epidemic we came across a new concept in the medicine. Modern medicine, actually modern medicine dealt more on diagnosis of a disease and treatment aspect, but public health was not the main domain of modern medicine. From cholera epidemic, we came with a new concept of primordial prevention. These preventive approaches were there in our medicinal system in Ayurveda and all, but in modern medicine, the prevention aspect became more technical from cholera only. We talked about primordial prevention, like the school kids, those who are at zero risk of getting mesothelioma or the bronchogenic carcinoma or the gastroesophageal reflux diseases or the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome from chronic alcoholism. All these things are preventable actually if you stop smoking and alcoholism. So we started teaching the school kids about all these effects. Okay, the primordial prevention as a concept began in 1800 after the cholera epidemic. Okay, so these all are the things which we learn from the epidemics. These are the things which we gain through the epidemics and pandemics. Okay, now talking about COVID-19 per se, COVID-19 is basically SARS-CoV-2 virus, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. Okay. Basically, it is having various layers, like it is a covered virus, actually enveloped virus. It is having lipid membrane proteins, spike proteins, and within that there is nucleocapsid covering, and within that single-stranded positive sense mRNA is present. Why this has to be understood? Because the enveloped form of viruses are relatively easy to kill. Only a 5 rupees soap, or 70% ethyl alcohol or 1% sodium hypochlorite solution can kill this virus. If you do proper hand washing for 20 seconds, you can kill the virus, you can prevent it. So here comes the role of human behavior that Dr. Roy was stressing, that Japan could easily ameliorate the epidemic situation, because after 2003 there are certain disturbances in noise. Okay, after 2003, when there was Middle East respiratory syndrome breakdown, the Japanese they made this trend of using mask as compulsory. Okay, and every time from 2003 till now, they always use mask while going in public transport or while going to the school. Okay, so these changes in the human behavior that played a major role. But here in India, it is like we are getting tensed by speaking a lot of time. Like while consulting in telemedicine, I used to tell a lot of people that you should wear a mask and you should do the hand washing, you should maintain the distance. It is a bit difficult over here. Okay. And the second thing is that we need to know the pathogenesis of the COVID-19. Then only we can know that how we can ameliorate the disease. Okay. See, this COVID-19, it is having the spike protein. It is getting attached to the AS2 receptor of the respiratory epithelial cell. Okay. This AS2, that is angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor, it will now, after the attachment of the coronavirus, it is causing the direct cytotoxic effect. The cell is getting killed. And second thing, it is dysregulating the RAS system, that is renin angiotensin aldosterone system, leading to the vasoconstriction. The blood vessel that is constricted, leading to the vasoconstriction, and there is increase in the vascular permeability. The fluid can easily travel from the intravascular side to the alveoli. Okay, thus the patient is suffering from type 1 respiratory syndrome, that is ARDS prototype of the COVID, that is acute respiratory distress syndrome. The alveoli is filled with fluid. Okay, this lead to the complications of pneumonia, and the patient die with normally the complications of pneumonia, the fibrosis. There is also the thromboembolism, the clotting, there is reduction in the fibrinolysis, increase in the D-dimer level, there is lymphopenia, neutrophilia, lot of things happen. There is cytokine release system. So the basic thing is that the virus comes through the droplets, enter into the respiratory system and affect our respiratory cells. The basic thing, the basic funda. Okay, so how we can prevent? First, the hand washing. If we do the proper hand washing, then this virus will be killed. Second thing, by maintaining the distance, that is 2 gaj ki duri. Okay, the government is trying so hard to instill this in the mind. You see, these are the droplet infections actually. The mucus or the droplets that can fly up to a certain distance only. It is not like air or carbon dioxide that it will just fly on and go to 12 kilometers or like that. It will travel till a certain distance, and due to the gravity, it will settle down. Okay. So if we maintain a proper distance of 1 meter, then we can easily be saved from the virus. Okay. And the third aspect is that if we wear the mask, Now, many people ask that, sir, you are a doctor, you are getting N95 mask, so you are not getting infected. But by cloth mask also, we can save a lot of people. So here, the main motto about humans would be helping others actually. We are becoming more self-related, like we are becoming more selfish. Okay. So if we think that if we try to save other, okay, like if the droplet from you, if it doesn't pass to the other person, then the other person will not be infected. And if everyone in a community think like that, then no one will be infected. Okay. So we must use. Hello. Can you please mute yourself? Hello. Okay. So now talking about the various health impacts which we saw in this epidemic, the first thing that I observed was that various other diseases which should have been given importance, due importance, could not be ameliorated. Like you see, the patients of chronic renal failure who need dialysis could not be given proper dialysis units. Then you see the surgery units were closed, the ENT units were closed, the dental units were closed. So it created a lot of hustle and bustle because people died from many other diseases, which was not per se corona. Okay. Now, second thing was that there is a increase in irrational use of cocktails. Now, cocktails in any form, be it alcohol or be it any medicine also, cocktails in any form is dangerous. You must take the consultation of the proper doctor before taking any medication. People were so much fearful about COVID, it became a phobia actually, that they didn't go to the doctor. They just wanted to pass on like that it is some form of common flu. It is we are not having COVID, so we will take the medication from the pharmacy. And it created a lot of hustle and bustle. Patient came with lot of complications, and there are a lot of side effects also. Okay. Now, the third thing that I would like to point that during this epidemic period, there is an upsurge in suicidal cases. Okay. Suicide per se is owing to, it is basically a manifestation of depression. Okay. And depression is nothing but a diarrhea of the hormones in the brain. When you are having diarrhea, do you die out of diarrhea? You take medication, you are cured from it. But this is such a taboo, this depression, that people they're committing suicide. You see, actually there are a lot of issue in this epidemic. People were debarred from going outside, from the social interaction. There was increase in the domestic violence. There was economical disparity. There was economical breakdown even. So these all are the causes of the depression, and humans stayed in a state of continuous stress in this period. But the thing is that when depression occurs, there is a reduction in the 5-hydroxytryptamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. So basically, it is the hormones which are playing the major role. If we consult a doctor in particular time, then we can prescribe the SSRI, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or the norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. There are certain medications which by which we can prevent depression, we can prevent the suicides. Okay, so this taboo has to be broken. It is a very wonderful thing that in this epidemic, people have become more vocal about this topic. This taboo has been broken, but more awareness has to be spread in this aspect. Okay, and another aspect that I noticed was the malnutrition. India has been pushed to the edge of malnutrition. There is overworking now. After lockdown, people are trying to overwork and they're underpaid. So there is a problem of unemployment in this country, leading to malnutrition. India in itself, per se, it was having a lot of cases of protein energy malnutrition, be the kwashiorkor or the marasmus. And presently now this malnutrition has grown into lot of numbers. Okay. So in this whole discussion, I would like to say one Sanskrit proverb that Sariram Adhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. Okay, so the priority has to be the health. If you don't give priority to the health, then all your activities have no meaning. If you are not alive, then what is the meaning of your wealth, or what is the meaning of your education? So health has to be the priority. Okay. And with this, I would conclude by giving some take-home messages that I normally give to all my patients actually, but this is without any fees. I am giving these take-home messages that first thing, we should prioritize our health. That is the most important thing. You try to do exercises, yoga, pranayam, because you see by yoga and pranayam, you are making your respiratory chest muscles strong. I'm not saying that by yoga or pranayam, the corona will not happen to you, but the thing is that you will get the power to fight with corona. When you fall in ICU, you will be recovering faster than other patients. One simple example, our grandfather used to say to blow conch shell, that is sunk, every day, twice a day. So in that, the sunk, the mechanism is that we are forcefully expiring the air through a narrow opening. Okay, the forced expiratory volume of the lungs increases, the breath holding capacity of the lungs increases, the respiratory muscles become stronger. Okay, so blowing conch shell, I'm not telling that I'm not jotting down a religious aspect over here, but by any way, if you increase the respiratory activity of your lungs, of your chest muscles, then that will help you in recovering from COVID, because basically it is acute respiratory distress syndrome. The patient is going into distress. So if that patient can recover, then only he can live. Okay, it is impossible that you are affected with COVID and you are not having distress. Okay, there are certain things like in milder cases there is no distress, there is no ARDS or the respiratory failure. In milder cases you can recover very well, but the thing is that you need to improve your immunity, you need to improve the chest muscle, you need to improve the lungs capacity. Okay, and then this golden words of a doctor: an apple a day keeps doctor away. You drink plenty of water, eat healthy fruits, vegetables, and this healthy lifestyle, avoid spicy and oily food. Okay, so basically I am concluding it by saying please eat apple and be healthy. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm so much grateful to Dr. Panda for his insights, specifically his professional insights, and then what I learned by the process of listening to you for around 15 minutes, that the tube oil phenomenon that you talked, that was quite learning for me, as I was a kind of researcher on Europe, and then this European story quite fascinated me. So then you drew historical examples of Ebola, SARS, then cholera and Spanish flu, and correlated with the present epidemic situation. So that was quite interesting and learning as well for me. And I hope our students of different disciplines who are amongst us, who are listening to these deliberations, maybe they must be getting inspired from you. Being a doctor, you are also drawing inferences from history and the examples, and then the free of cost, without fee take-home messages, specifically blowing the conch and significance of expanding our lungs and chest, and the dispelling of distress. That was interesting on my part to learn, being their teacher. So I hope my students would be learning a lot from the deliberation of a second speaker being a doctor. So I hope and sincerely pray that apart from your sense of service during this COVID period, we are really proud of you, Dr. Panda, and then I hope your handwriting as well as the sense of service will improve over the time, and would be able to draw benefits from your long period of learning apart from the society.
Asking a doctor to improve his handwriting is a blunder.
Okay. Anyways, so on a lighter note, thank you, Dr. Panda, for giving us for sharing your precious time with us. I hope you would have learned a lot. So this is a message for all the participants that I have written in the chat box. That I have shared the agenda also in the chat box. You can glance over it, and then there is a file I have shared in the chat box. So all the participants are requested, and specifically the students are encouraged to ask questions after all the deliberations of the three speakers are over. And if some of the students are feeling shy because of a lot of reasons, then you can also write your questions in the chat box. so that I can redirect them through my voice and image to our distinguished panelists so that they can answer and impress upon their ideas. And then all the distinguished participants who are across the discipline being connected with us from outside, they are also encouraged to ask questions, give us their suggestions as well, and then also they can extend the points being deliberated by two of our speakers till now as per their specific domain of knowledge or discipline. So this is the information for all the participants. And then now I'd like to request my dear students Alekha again to read on the profile of Dr. Neetu, and then Dr. Neetu is requested next after Alekha gives her introduction to open her remarks on the theme of education related to our topic of today's webinar deliberation. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Alekha.
Thank you, sir. It's a double treat on my part to impress upon the credentials of our third panelist of today's national webinar again. We are truly privileged to receive amongst us Dr. Neetu ma'am as an expert of education theme for today's webinar, and hope to observe precious knowledge from her distinguished learning curve. On the professional front, Dr. Neetu is presently serving as an assistant professor at Central University of South Bihar, India, in the discipline of international law. She has obtained her MPhil and PhD degrees from the Center for International Legal Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, New Delhi, and also awarded with UGC Research Fellowship and the prestigious DAD Fellowship of the European Union and German government. She is the recipient of Right Livelihood Junior Scientist Award by the University of Bonn, Germany in the year 2016. Before joining Central University of South Bihar, Dr. Neetu was associated with CMR School of Legal Studies, Bengaluru, as an assistant professor and JNU as a doctoral teaching assistant. She has several papers to her credit in journals of her national and international importance and finds frequent mention in the Google Scholar citation indexing. She has presented papers at various national and international platforms and conferences, including at the University of Michigan, United States of America. Her areas of interest include international law, human rights law, and sustainable development. She is also the member of various academic and professional bodies across the globe. We are indeed grateful to Neetu ma'am for accepting our invitation to be an expert panelist for today's webinar on the theme of education. Now, I would like to request ma'am to present her deliberations. The digital space of your dialogue belongs to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ale, for that lovely introduction. And I'm also very thankful to Dr. Bijaya Maharana, the principal of Mdc Deogarh, and the convener of this program, Dr. Hemant for inviting me to share my views on the topic of education and the challenges that this right to education has faced in the post-COVID situation and is still facing. So talking about education, it would be unfair on my part if I don't mention the two important and interrelated goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. First is the goal number 1, eradication of poverty. And second is the goal number 4 that talks about quality education. Education, we all know, is a means to eradicate poverty because it ensures your right to work. However, the right to work mentioned in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights does not mention right to work as in every person who has appropriate degrees and qualification will get the work. That is not the case. The explanatory note of right to work says two things: rights at work and rights to be able to work. That means you will be provided just and human conditions at work. And secondly, right to be able to work means the government will be providing you vocational and practical knowledge and certain skills so that if any vacancy arises, then you will be the appropriate candidate to apply for. It does not ensure you right to work. It only ensures right at work and right to be able to work. talking about this impact of this global pandemic on education, as Dr. Panda has said that it has created a crisis, but it would be more appropriate to say that the crisis was already there, whether it was in the polity section or the health section or the education sector. It has just merely exposed the existing crisis. The health sector in India was already deteriorating. The education sector in India was already deteriorating. It has just exposed that crisis. Okay, and the receiving ends and the most affected population due to this crisis was the students from the rural background, because they're not that privileged to, as we are talking about the remote means of learning nowadays, they're not privileged to have that. So talking about, we'll talk about all these issues at length, and the most important part will be the report of the special rapporteur on right to education, and the points she has mentioned that the countries at large, whether developing or developed, are facing due to this crisis. So India's response with respect to COVID-19 was that it has announced a lockdown, and simultaneously, subsequently, all the educational institutions were also brought to standstill. They were closed. The students were not allowed to enter the school premises. All the students, teachers, everybody were directed to stay at home and to conduct the online teaching programs from the home itself. Okay. Such as has been the importance of right to education, that the official Office of the High Commission on Human Rights has said that it is one of the means to get employed, and it is also a means to break this vicious circle of poverty, because a person who is educated will be in a position to get a job comparatively paid more as compared to the person who is not that literate. Okay, so then this has been the observation of the Office of the High Commission on Human Rights. Education was not a right until 1992, because it was only after the passing of the crucial judgment of the Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka in the year 1992 that the judiciary propounded upon this issue that right to education is a part of right to life and personal liberty, and a person cannot have a quality of life unless he or she is properly educated. And it is the onus is on the educational institutions not to have such massive fees to deprive the unprivileged sections of the society from this very basic human right of education. So after this judgment in the year 2002, after passing of the 86th Amendment Act, Article 21A was inserted in the Constitution of India to make it as a constitutional right. Talking about the COVID's impact on right to education was that the only incentive by the people, by the students from rural background went to schools was the midday meal program, apart from, because it gave you food. If you are not getting food, your parents will be employing you, forcing you to get employed in a job that is not suited to you. But since you are getting food free of cost from the government, that was one of the incentive that drew the children towards the school. However, after the closure of the school, this program was disrupted, and the data says that approximately 120 million children were enrolled in the midday meal program and subsequently enrolled as a student in the classrooms. People say that there has been dropout rates in the school from the rural background, but it would not be appropriate to call it as a dropout rate, because the students are not dropping out from the school voluntarily. They are dropping out from the schools because the government is not providing the conditions for them to stay in schools and learn something. It would be appropriate to call it as a pull-out rate. The onus is on the government to provide the facilities. It's not the mistake of the student that they are forced to drop out from the schools. That's the one argument that I would like to put forward. And this whole scenario of school closure without appropriate planning has forced many students to streets. Now they are not going to school, they're sitting idle, and there has been the financial crisis of the families at large, that they are being employed in a very odd kind of jobs as well. So that is another concern, that how this COVID-19 situation, this global pandemic has impacted the education and the facilities of right to education of the children from the rural background. Talking about the existing inequality, the inequality was already there because the people from high affluent and rich wealthy classes could afford private schooling and everything, but the minimum fees of these government schools was an incentive for the people, for the students from rural background to go and learn something from the government schools. We all know about the conditions of teaching in the government schools, if you don't talk about Delhi or other metro states. In states like Bihar and other neighboring states, the situation of government schools is not that fine. We might have an understanding over that. This global pandemic has widened this inequality to a greater extent, because remote learning is not just a concept. It comes with so many ifs and buts. For example, you need to have an Android phone. You need to have a good internet connectivity. You need to have a proper electricity running to charge your phone and for that service to exist at place. We all know the situation of electricity in the remote parts of the villages. It's not that dicey to understand. Talking about the internet connectivity, the data that talks about the status of internet connectivity has been given by Statista in the year 2020, that India has 560 million internet users out of 1.38 billion people. And the availability and accessibility of internet can be divided on two grounds: urban availability and accessibility versus rural availability and accessibility. Neither it's available nor it's easy for the rural people to access this internet connectivity, nor they have Android phones and everything. If you travel through public transport now and then, you will get to hear this concern of the parents that you need a big Android phone for your children to continue to study, which they cannot afford to. That's one of the concerns of the parents of the rural background. Uninterrupted power supply is one of the issues. Cheap data we are getting from because of this competition, and Jio is happily providing this cheap data. But there are certain other concerns also which the special rapporteur on right to education has raised, like for example the privacy concerns, whether your data is being used or misused for some other purpose which they have not taken consent of. This is one of the concerns which has been raised by the special rapporteur. There are also lack of infrastructural facilities, proper training to teachers, because teachers are also struggling with the use of technologies, how they have to send the PDF notes, how the students will download that. Downloading that documents requires huge GB of data, which the students are still not in a position to buy. Proper training to teachers is required. Then the financial crunch of the families, we have seen that this COVID-19 situation has also caused an economic crisis. Now people are not left with that much amount of money to afford that data every time for their classes, especially for the people from the rural background. So these are what some of the concerns of the challenges that India is facing in the COVID-19 situation. Talking about right to education and international law, so Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the prime human rights document that incorporates all sets of rights, whether it's economic, social, and cultural rights or civil and political rights. However, the basic difference between these two sets of rights is that economic, social, and cultural rights are aspirational goals, whereas political and civil rights are immediate goals. That means they will be implemented as it is, but for the implementation of economic, social, and cultural rights, the country will have to put in place the available resources. If the resources are not there, they can happily take the excuse that we are not left with so much of resources to provide this economic, social, and cultural rights to our people. But then there are international principles such as common but differential responsibility that has been put at place, that this common responsibility of providing economic, social, and cultural rights is on the shoulder of every government of the world. It might be differential. That means if a country from Africa, it is poor, it might contribute a lesser amount of money, but from the developed countries, it is very much expected that they will contribute a larger amount of money. Apart from that, if not legal, they also have a moral obligation, because earlier they have survived on the resources of these colonized countries. Africa and Asian countries are poor today because their resources have already been exhausted by these developed countries. And now they cannot do away with the fact that we are the beggar's basket. We don't have enough resources. Africa is one of the resource-rich country, but it's still facing the poverty situations at large there. Same is the country with Asian continent as well. So they cannot run away with this moral obligation as well. They are developed because they've already exhausted our resources, and they are still exhausting these resources from the African continent. So right to education and international law has been given under the banner of International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and in specific General Comment number 13. General comments are those commentaries which gives you an explanatory view of the rights mentioned under the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So General Comment number 13 has listed 4 points with respect to right to education. First one is availability. Second one is accessibility. Third one is adaptability, and fourth one is acceptability. Availability means education should be made available to all without any discrimination. That the grounds of discrimination that we know so far, like gender, sex, caste, issue, religion, anything will not come as a barrier to obstruct a person's right to education. That is the whole concept of availability. Second is the issue of accessibility. It means that education should be made accessible, and it should be accessible both physically and economically. That means it should be within the reach of the student. And secondly, there should not be an economic hurdle that obstruct a person from attending education or gaining education. Adaptability and acceptability means that it should be in such a format, the syllabus, the curriculum should be in such a format that it is adaptable to the students. They should be in a position to accept that. It should not be against their culture at large. If it is their culture at large, then it should be modified according to their cultural practices as well. Cultural right, we all know, is such an important aspect of a human being. It identifies, you identify yourself with the culture that you carry. So these are the 4 aspects of right to education and international law. There have been certain initiatives on the part of international organizations as well, how to cope up with this COVID situation and to ensure right to education to all the peoples around the globe. So in this, the lead has been taken by UNESCO, United Nations Educational Scientific Council Organization. It has prepared a COVID-19 response document wherein it is said that the educational institution should shift to online mode of teaching. There should be proper funding from the part of the government. Infrastructural facilities should be strengthened. Proper training should be given to teachers as well as to students, so that they should cope up with this whole online mode of teaching. We all know that how we are. Like Dr. Hemant does, since he is in the academia, he can easily vouch that we have been taking classes through Google Hangout, Google Meet, Zoom classes, Microsoft. There have been several platforms that we have been using. But it was quite easy for our generation people to easily adopt that. But for seniors, professors, they are still struggling with these things. But still they are learning, and that's a welcome part on every teaching faculty, because you cannot ensure right to education unless and until 2 parties are properly trained. First, the teachers who are imparting education, and second, the learners, that is the students who have been equally skilled in this art of online teaching. Some of them are like, it cannot be ruled out. The financial crunch that the poor families and the pupils from rural background are facing cannot be ruled out, and they need adequate funding from the government as well. And also adequate funding should also be dispensed of for the proper training of the parents and the teachers. Parents at the same time are also struggling with the online teaching, because they have every time they have to be with their kids, and they also struggle how to ensure that the teaching which is done through online mode, the students, that their children are receiving what is being conveyed by the teachers. Now, the most important point in this whole discussion has been the report of the Special Rapporteur on Right to Education, she submitted the report on 20th June 2020. These special rapporteurs are like individuals, experts who have been appointed by the Human Rights Council to do their work on 2 points. Either they will carry out a thematic reports or country reports. In a country report, they will go to country and will monitor the human rights situations there. Whereas in a thematic report, they will pick up a theme and then prepare a report on that. So Miss Combo Bolly Barry, who she was from Burkina Faso, and she has been appointed as a special rapporteur on right to education, and she submitted the report on 20 June 2020. And that was a thematic report on right to education and the situation or the challenges which this right to education is being faced due to this COVID-19 situation. So some of the observations which she has made or the challenges which she has pointed out is worthy to be noted. The recommendations and suggestions are more worthy to be welcomed and to be incorporated in the national domestic policies. So she has said that she clearly says that COVID-19 situation did not create the crisis. It has just exposed the crisis which was already existing. She also says that this remote or online mode of teaching should not be a permanent solution. We should try and resort to move to this offline mode of teaching. Why? Because there are certain category of students who cannot cope up with this online mode of teaching. For example, children with intellectual disability, they need a face-to-face interaction, and there are special trained teachers for them. You cannot expect them to learn through online mode of teaching when the teachers themselves are not trained. Second is the issue with blind students. All the braille lipi and everything, the adequate software they had in their institutions, and the technology has not been so equipped that you deliver your lectures through online mode and make them understand everything. So these are the two categories of students who are facing utmost difficulties. Second, apart from these two issues, the other issue that she has raised is the effect of screen on the health of children. Constant watching of mobiles, laptops is very detrimental for their health. So that's the other concern she has raised. She has also raised concerns with respect to infrastructure, that means laptop, electricity, internet connectivity, which should be provided to the remotest of the countries so that this right to education should be ensured. She also talks about teachers, parents training. And the other concern she raises is of online abuse and privacy concerns during this online teaching. When this whole shutting down of educational institution was going on, the only drawback that she mentions is teachers were not consulted when this decision was taken. Also, teachers were not consulted when this online teaching was given. Like, they were only dictated that you have to take online teaching, you have to provide materials and everything. You cannot ensure teaching unless and until you ask the teachers themselves that what should be the ultimate remedy. That's the other concern she has raised. There are certain important recommendations and suggestions also that she has made. So, for example, with respect to online teaching, she notes 3 factors: high-tech teaching, low-tech teaching, and no-tech teaching. In high-tech teaching, she says that you can resort to this online modes of teaching, that's Google Classrooms and everything. In low-tech teaching, she says that in remotest of the area, this education or the whole syllabus that you are teaching should be done through television and radio, which is accessible to quote-unquote majority of the people in the rural background. No-tech teaching means that document like syllabus or the notes in a documented form should be provided to the people in the rural background. So this whole teaching process, the COVID-19 situation and during the lockdown period, has to have an amalgamation of these 3 factors of high-tech teaching, low-tech teaching, and no-tech teaching. That's one of the recommendations she makes. She also has been instrumental in concluding the Abedzan Principles on Education, which is a compilation of the views of all the experts that how right to education will be ensured during this COVID situation, and what are the measures that the government should take to ensure this education. Other concern which she raises is that there has been certain discrepancies when it comes to inequality issues. For example, we have seen the discrepancy with respect to access to education to urban and rural background. But at the same time, there has been certain inequalities with respect to gender as well. For example, recently you might have seen in news that the UP Uttar Pradesh Commission for Women, she said that giving Android phones to girl is one of the means that she is getting spoiled and crimes are committed against her, right? So the parents are thinking that if we give this Android phones to our girl's child, she might not end up using it for her educational purpose, and she might use it for inappropriate purposes, quote unquote, and will get spoiled up. They don't have the same concern for their male child. The only concern is like bigad jayega, but the daughter will take a step further and will spoil our quote unquote honor. Okay, so that is some of the concerns the special rapporteur has rightly raised. The governments across the globe has also failed to provide this basic necessities, forget about its own nationals, but also to refugees as well. The refugees have also not been given proper food, health facilities, and education as well. So education has been at the sideline totally. Okay, talking about the condition of teachers in her report, she says that there has been frequent termination of teachers. Teachers has been laid off. There has been no remuneration to the teachers or no rest or leisure time. For example, if you have to take classes from online mode only, you can take 5 classes a day. And if 3 teachers were deployed to take 2 classes per week, you are minusing those 2 teachers and keeping only 1 teacher, that you don't have to go to classes. You're not physically exhausted, let alone like if you're mentally exhausted, nobody cares about that. So you can take that classes, and they have laid off the number of teachers. So there has been a crisis on the part of the teachers as well. No remuneration on the part of the students. Some of the governments, what they have did this, not government, some of the private schools, what they have done is they're compelling the students to pay the trimester fees in advance. And they are also charging the students for all the facilities which are not being given in an online mode. For example, students are not using your sports complex, not using your library in an offline mode. You can reduce the fees of the library in an online mode and can totally cut off the sports fees that you are charging on the students. But they're not doing so. They are charging everything, and they are also demanding the submission of the trimester fees in advance. The special rapporteur has requested the governments to ask for a moratorium on that, a suspension on all this kind of activities which the private schools are carrying on at their part. She also talks about that she also talks about that there has been massive collapse of low fee schools. There has been budget cut due to the economic crisis that the government are facing, that have weakened education, and there has been cut on the part of the state funding as well. So the recourse or the remedy that this suggests is that the governments should partner with International Monetary Fund and in other international economic organizations to request for more funding so that this crucial right of education could be sustained and provided to all. However, she also raises a genuine concern that partnering with this all international organization might also compromise their sovereignty at an extent. So they should pressurize this international economic organization to provide the proper funding. They should use their membership for this purpose if they are members of this international organization, rather than submitting to their views unconditionally. So this is one of the concerns. The whole point of making this inequality issue and to ensure quality education is that rather than talking about education, we should resort to using this as a right to inclusive quality education. Inclusive means it should not be discriminated on the basis of urban rural population, gender, refugee, or nationals. And quality means it should be not be a formality that we are conducting these online classes through online means, but it should be an amalgamation of high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech teaching so that this education should be spread to the nooks and corners of every society. So this was all about the right to education and the challenges which this right is facing in the government in the post-COVID situation, and still due to the there have been apprehension that third wave is also on the way. So C suggests that there should be a multi-dimensional and multi-sectoral approach. There should be a targeted approach that not even a single person is left out in the enjoyment of right to education, because it's one of the crucial right, not only to eradicate poverty, but also to make you a better human being, and to the whole structure of we have been discussing this democracy, the independence and everything. Unless and until you are an informed citizen, you cannot say that the democracy is working in a very smooth manner. And apart from that, other rights are also dependent on right to education. For example, if you have right to education, you will be in a position to get employed. Not to an extent like 100%, but there are chances that you will get employed and better paid as compared to a non-literate person. So this will help in ending the vicious circle of poverty, and will also help in achieving the sustainable development goals. Yeah, thank you. That was all on my part. Dr. Das, did I end up very fast, or we still have time? You're not audible. Your audio is off. Audio is off. Yeah.
Okay. Hope I am audible, right?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Okay, thank you. Again, the technical deficiencies on our part being teachers. Okay, so if you want, then you can speak for another 5 minutes.
Otherwise, the important points I have
also open dialogue session. There are some questions.
Yeah,
also.
We can open that.
Okay, fine. So I think we are almost to the point with the time frame we have devised before. We are almost going with the frame, and we are only 10 minutes being added with our schedule that we have already mentioned. So the third speaker, Dr. Neetu, talked about education, being a specialist, being an academician. She talked about the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, and if we consider national education policy specifically, and quite jotting down your points with respect to my appreciations regarding the concept of making education policy which intends to make it more inclusive, to eliminate the barriers involved with education as a right, specifically for children, and then at the later stages of higher education. And then when I remember my education in JNU, yesterday I was talking with some of my colleagues regarding the appreciation point being a higher educational institution JNU provides. The girls are getting 5 incremental points, and then the domicile category of educational institutions where with respect to their geographical locations. So while connecting the point or the string of appreciation to some categories of students, or then to the fairer gender, my point is, if we are going to make education inclusive for everyone, then what about the geographical barriers when we are making policies in an unison of urban and rural divide, making a kind of barrier in between the students who are trying to get digitally connected at a point of time when COVID has almost crippled the physical interactions with all our students. So let's make data accessibility and data availability as a right also on the part of students, or if you are going to give free elementary education to students of across a pan-Indian level, then what about the data availability and accessibility? If I am unable to help my students get a smartphone, and then we are compelling them to come across Zoom and the Google platform to connect for the classes, and then taking digital attendance for them. In that respect, they are quite deprived. So making a policy point on the UN framework level, or talking about policy sitting at the Raisina forums and Raisina buildings, it's quite easy. And then if I am going to talk from my point of view, sitting at the 30th district of Odisha, that's Deogarh, then most of my students lack a smartphone. Most of them lack a data plan on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. So they're quite deprived. And in that point of time, just after 2 decades of the new millennium, we're talking about national education policy and inclusivity for everyone, and making policies sitting at the capital cities and expecting everyone to get digitally connected. We being teachers and very well off in our situation, organizing this webinar, we are getting disconnected. So what about them? This is a kind of systemic deficiency on their part, and then a kind of policy deficiency on our part as well. So apart from the criticism, we can also appreciate some of the points that Dr. Neetu made, like the disadvantaged situation that already was, is quite improving. And then we hope from tomorrow onwards, we are going to have physical classes of our students. So maybe the situation will improve, and then the objective of inclusivity may get a physical form. So now I think we have reached a point when we can open the forum for discussion. And then I have 2 questions specifically by a bright student of zoology. She is doing MPhil. Jayalalitha Jyothi is a MPhil research scholar at Sambalpur University in the subject zoology. So she has 2 questions in the chat box. So her first question is that maybe the question is directed to our China specialist or international relations specialist, Dr. Roy, that regarding the origin of the COVID virus, is it naturally evolved, or it's a lab creation? Maybe she's relating to the global conspiracy theory looming on our head since last 2 years. So maybe this question is directed to Dr. Roy, or maybe Dr. Panda can also give his inputs on this question. And then I have another question by the same research scholar, Jayalalitha, that this is specifically directed to Dr. Divya Ranjan, that why do not we touch a dead body even after someone died? Is it a social taboo? Is there any biological reasons involved, or what are the reasons behind we do not touch a dead body even after death? So these are the 2 questions raised by a research scholar, and then maybe our panelists can answer these 2 questions, and then we'll proceed further for the open dialogue session, where our distinguished faculty members, my colleagues, and then students can ask questions totally. If you're still reluctant to ask difficult questions, then you can also write it in the dialogue box, so that I'll be your medium to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. So
Hi, Dr. Dash. Maybe it is directed towards Divya Ranjan, but I would just say about what is the general trend about, because it's a very political question also, that whether it is lab originated, or or it is it has a natural evolutionary history. So the political version is that first, when in the entire COVID-19 started, then there was a lot of rage against China, and definitely. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are clear.
Yeah, so the thing is that there was a lot of rage against China, and if you remember, then Trump started this Chinese virus, thing, when a significant number of people started actually referring it to as a Chinese virus, and because of which this entire racism debate also started. And then kind of China counter narrated, saying that no, it is not it was first originated in Europe, and then then it came to us. And then again, so there has been a lot of these studies which has been done by both Western and the Chinese funded agencies trying to blame each other on where from it originated. And the latest is that Washington Post kind of came out with an investigative story where it claimed that the chronology of the reports of the cases show that how actually it originated in China, and there are high probabilities that it originated from a lab. And also Australian media, they ran a story where they said that Pentagon had retrieved some kind of documents, and which claimed that it was planned. The entire coronavirus was planned by Chinese military. It was a part of the Chinese military strategy. And now, for this reason, now Biden administration has come up with this thing that they want a complete investigation of
I guess the sound has been muted from Dr. Roy's part. Hello.
Is it fine now? Fine.
Yeah.
When did it get muted? Like when last? कितना सुना तुमने? मतलब, what did you hear? Like last where I was? Did the Washington Post story?
Yeah, Washington Post.
Yeah, so after that I talked about the Australian media, that how Australian media claimed that it was a part of the Chinese military strategy and it was definitely lab originated. And then the latest is Biden administration has come up with this voice of again investigating the origin of coronavirus. And finally World Health Organization, after their first round of investigation in China where they did not find anything, they wanted to go there for the second time. So China said that no, you rather go to Maryland where we think that coronavirus has originated from United States. So there is a lot of this counter allegation. So I just wanted to inform you about what was going on that part. That's all. Thanks.
On to that, a case was also filed in the US court regarding regarding the allegation that China has spread this virus.
Even in India, there was a case filed in, there was an RTI filed even in India. So yeah, people come up with crazy ideas.
Yeah, the thing is that I would like to say that coronavirus per se, it is an older form of virus. Like in children, basically in pediatric unit, we see pediatric children getting affected by Norwalk virus, rotavirus, and coronavirus. These are the three most important virus which causes pediatric diarrhea. Okay, so coronavirus was present from a lot of since time immemorial. Okay, but the thing is that this SARS-CoV-2, which is the novel coronavirus, it was actually in Hubei province of Wuhan city actually. In China. So I don't know the political implications and all those things, whether it was lab originated or something else. But there are high probabilities that it might be from lab or it might be some mutated version. So I won't comment on that aspect. But yes, coronavirus was there. But this one is a much mutated form, and a big thing about these things are that I would like to say that whichever disease has higher form of infectivity, it has a reduced form of mortality. Like you see the HIV/AIDS. Okay, the infectivity strategies of HIV/AIDS is very complex. It has to be sexually transmitted, or it has to be transmitted through blood transfusions. Okay, through the needles, IV needles. So that is a complex form of transmission. Hence, the mortality is too high. The infectivity is less. Like until and unless it is sexual contact, until and unless it is IV contact, then it cannot be transmitted. You just cannot transmit HIV/AIDS by just touching, okay, or by coughing. So the infectivity is less, but the mortality is very high. You see rabies, it has 100% case fatality rate. So rabies is affected when a dog bites you, and that has to be a rabid dog. Okay, but here you see COVID, it has a very easy infectivity. Someone coughs and you get COVID. Someone was sitting there and you just touch the fomites and you get COVID. So the infectivity is so easy. So on that basis, so we can say that mortality should have been low. And mortality is also low. So we just cannot say that mortality is high because case fatality rate is somewhere around 1.5, the average rate around the world. But the infectivity is so high that the numbers are you just cannot imagine the number of deaths that has happened in COVID. So I can't comment on that political aspect, but yes, COVID was there. And it is a mutated form. It might be a naturally mutated form or it might be laboratory mutated form, but it is a mutated form, which is it is evident from the present research scenarios.
Okay. So there are two more questions on the part of students. The first question is from Mr.Alekha Prasad. He's a political science student, honor student. So his question is directed to Dr. Roy, that what are the basic components of multilateralism? And the second question is quite connected, that is multilateralism right for us with respect to the nation state we are having, with respect to the Indian scenario? And if yes, then tell us that why do we need multilateralism, or what is the essence of multilateralism specifically for us? This is a question by Mr. Alekha Prasad, and then there is another question related to vaccine. This is a personal question and that is not in the open forum. So the specific question is directed to Dr. Panda, that suppose a person, an individual, irrespective of gender, is COVID asymptomatic and then positive yet asymptomatic, still he or she goes for a vaccine, whatever vaccine it is, vaccine or Covishield or other forms of vaccines we have. So what would be the ramifications or impact on the positive asymptomatic patient or individual? So these are the three questions. First two for Dr. Roy and the third one for Dr. Patra. So thank you. I hope the panelists can respond now. Thank you.
Alek, the component or the essence of multilateralism is plurality. So it is multilateralism is when multiple parties or countries, they come together and they form an association or an organization. That is what is manifested through multilateralism. So what was your second question, that whether we need multilateralism?
Yes,
in India?
Yes.
So the thing is that India definitely, the thing is that we live in a globalized world. And during my presentation, I spoke about how there is this rise of nationalism and isolationism, taking place. But the rise of nationalism is more about the, making a brand for the global economy. Making the maximum of your local capacities and your local, resources, and making a brand of it, and marketing it as how it can be relevant to the world and how you can market it to the world. So today's nationalism at the grassroots level, you can see that yes, a lot of these, there is a lot of this, talking about, there is a lot of this grassroots nationalism, which is more connected to about this my country, that this. But at the functional level, the Atmanirbhar Bharat is creating a brand for the global economy. So when it is creating a brand from the global economy, it is not isolating it from the multilateral world. It is rather connected to the multilateral world through a nationalist, agenda, or through a nationalistic, a marketing thing. So definitely multilateralism is the essence, and we live in an interdependent world, and we can't do without multilateralism. COVID-19's future is multilateralism, because after we vaccine diplomacy, we saw that how when the second wave came and people were dying, so how India dependent on even Kenya, even Bangladesh, supplied us medical, help. So definitely multilateralism is right. It is the essence of the interdependent globalized world. Nobody can live in isolation. Nobody. So yeah, that's my answer. Thanks.
Dr. Panda, I think you'll respond to the third question. That was an anonymous question on the part of a student.
Yes, what was the question? Whether someone can take vaccine if he or she is infected?
Yes, an individual, irrespective of gender, is positive yet asymptomatic, and he or she goes for vaccine. So, what would be the ramifications or impact on that individual?
No,
that's
as per the guidelines, if a person is getting infected, then from the day one of the test positive report, okay, 90 days has to be taken as a gap period. Okay, before 90 days, you cannot take vaccine, because it is a report from CDC that in that period, you are getting the natural immunity against the virus. Okay, so you have to wait for 90 days before taking the vaccine after first positive test report. And if you have taken vaccine, and you are getting infected, that is the second possibility, that you have taken vaccine and then you are infected. Then the next vaccine, you will have to wait for 8 weeks at least. Okay, because there is a overlap of the acquired immunity, that is through the vaccine, and the natural immunity. Okay, in the first case, that is the natural immunity through the virus. Okay, so you wait for 90 days, then you take the vaccination. So that will increase your period of immunity. Okay, and in the second case, you wait for 8 weeks at least. So that is the national guideline actually.
No, Dr. Panda, you mentioned some very right things, but maybe the question is directed somewhat in a different way. The question is exactly that the individual doesn't know whether he or she is positive because of the asymptomatic reflections. He or she is unable to gauze his or her ailment, and then he or she goes for a vaccination. So what would be the biological, psychological, physical implications of that individual if that individual is asymptomatic yet he or she goes for a vaccination? Would that be any
if someone is asymptomatic, that means he is deemed to be fit, he is not having the disease. Okay, and if he is getting the test positive report, okay, that means due to any cause he had gone for the testing. So if there is test positive report, then he or she has to wait for 90 days. And if he has not done the testing and he has gone for the vaccination, then it is completely fine, you take the vaccine, because you don't know whether you are asymptomatic or symptomatic. When you don't know anything about the disease, when you don't know about your own body, then why you need to complain? And the second thing, if ever you are asymptomatic and you think that you might have the virus in the body and you have taken the vaccine, then it will not cause much problem, because if you are asymptomatic, that means you are in a milder state of the disease. Okay, there are 3 categorization of COVID-19: mild, moderate, and severe. So if your partial pressure saturation of the oxygen is above 95 and you are not symptomatic, you are not having fever, no bone pain or malaise or fatigue or any other symptom, you are asymptomatic, then there is not much of the problem. Okay, if you face any problem, then you consult your doctor, and it will not pose much danger, because vaccine is actually inactivated form. It is aimed at gaining your immunity actually. Okay, be it the whole virion, inactivated whole virion Covaxin, or the adenoviral vector, viral vector-based vaccine of Covishield, or the mRNA-based vaccine of Pfizer, Moderna. Any vaccine that is aimed at increasing your immunity. Okay, that is not aimed at decreasing your immunity. So if ever you are having any problem, then that will be ameliorated. It won't pose any bigger threat actually. So vaccination has to be done. Everyone must take the vaccine. Be safe, be healthy, practice all the COVID behavior that has been set up by government. That's it.
Okay, there are 2 questions for Dr. Neetu actually, and The other question specifically directed to me. Students are quite vibrant today. The first question is by a student who is a student of Ravenshaw University, Cuttack, that's in Odisha. And then the question is for Dr. Neetu. Her question is whether you assume this technological gap is a temporary phenomenon, or is it going to get eliminated soon with respect to the implications on efficacy of national education policy? Whether national education policy has any clear distinction of physical education and then digital education, and do you think with respect to the implementational future of NEP, is it going to help in the digital education process, specifically if you're going to face any pandemic situation in future? The first question. And then there is a postdoctoral fellow. He's a colleague of me from the University of British Columbia. He has specifically directed a personal question to me. And this is also specifically directed to Dr. Neetu on the theme of education. So the query on the part of Mr. Biswas, he's a postdoctoral fellow. So whether NEP has any examples in any global country or any developed state from which Indian government has extracted it out, because the individual concerned who has asked this question is quite excited researching on Indian constitution there, and as we have derived the Indian constitution and norms and specifically DPSP and preamble and other aspects from other states. So he is quite interested to know whether NEP is derived from any other state of the globe. India has derived. Is there any certain example of success of NEP-like structures or policies other places of the globe, and whether India has derived it from there? And then the second part of the question is, do you think any such kind of pandemic is going to affect higher education and primary education, and going to create a gap between educational institutions and create a gap between urban-rural divide within the sphere of India? So these are the two questions directed for Dr. Neetu.
Okay,
so over to you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Dr. Das. It's not in the chat box. So the first question is with respect to that, whether this technical glitch is going to be permanent or temporary, and what is the remedy out, right? Okay, the summary of the first question is that, and the summary of the second question is what NEP has in its box to suggest as a remedy, and whether it has been influenced from the other governments or not, right? Yeah. So with respect to the first question, that whether this technical glitch and the issues that we're facing is temporary or permanent, or whether we will be able to come up in terms of this, is contingent on many factors. See, we cannot say that we will be able to overcome these technical issues and the lack of infrastructural factors in one go. There has to be, as I already mentioned, there has to be common and differential responsibility, and there has to be a proper international cooperation with respect to this. Because some of the countries, I mean, not some of the countries, it would be wrong to say that, most of the countries are going through an economic crisis. But there is a necessity for international cooperation, that even if they are going through an economic crisis, they are still in a position to cooperate and cope up with the situation and to assist each other. For example, Dr. Panda will be watching for this, that with respect to the health facilities, that the help that came, it flew from the international actors and non-international actors with respect to providing of oxygen cylinders, vaccines and everything, like they, to an extent, stabilize the situation. Same is the case with education and technical issues that we are facing. If there is an economic cooperation, there is a international cooperation from all the actors, not only the state actors, but also from the non-state actors. Education for Initiative for Education, UNESCO, the international organization, all other non-governmental organizations are working at large to bridge this educational inequality gap that is existing in the developing countries. And that is not the case with developing countries alone. The issue of electricity and internet accessibility is more in the southern African countries and some of the countries, some of the provinces in France as well, as I was going through the report of the special rapporteur. So this remedy, you can say it would be remedy to an extent only if there is an international cooperation at the larger level. Talking about your next question, whether international education policy has something in its bag for this, to issue this, to address this issue of pandemic or not. When we talk about equitable and inclusive education, NEP has provision with respect to providing scholarships to people who are not in a position to afford education, and also to ensure education to the girl child specifically. They have this provision, but the NEP needs further policies for the provisions to be implemented, and we'll see it in due course of time. For example, there was one provision that you can leave the education, join another course, and then also come back. There will be like floating from one course to another will be allowed for your own growth. And this has been implemented and some of the UGC guideline has come place. But with respect to these technical glitches, that what kind of scholarship will be provided, how you will ensure the education to the girl child specifically or people from rural background is yet to be seen. In European countries, we see that they work for a while, then decide that what is their interest area. Then they come to that interest area and then they excel in that area. However, the situation in developing countries, particularly India, is not that so, because we have been so inclined to this like ratification system, what we call it in popular parlances. Like we just want to do our 10th, then do science, arts and commerce are still on this sidelined way. Science, then we want to pursue graduation or certain vocational courses. For example, after pursuing like engineering, people think that they want to go for UPSC or they want to pursue some other career. So this policy of following like a lamb has been prevalent in the Indian educational system. Also, the marking pattern that mark is a criteria of your excelling as a student is also quite flawed. So all these basic things needs to be addressed first. So in this thing, we have been following the improvements or the existing system already at place in the European countries, where you give space to the children to decide what is best for them rather than following like a lamb in the Indian education system. So we hope that we are taking clues from other foreign countries and trying to improvise the present education system by incorporating national education policy, but still more policies are needed to implement the specific provisions that will reduce the inequality issues in education. That was on my part. Hope I addressed the issue.
Okay. So, thank you, Dr. Neetu. And then there are two more questions on the part of the participants. Miss Rameshwari Karthik, I don't know her background, but she said that she's a part of the government of Odisha. Maybe she's working with the government in any sector of policy. So her question is specifically directed to, the first question is specifically directed to, no, it's directed to all the panelists, but it relates to education, I think. The question is, the government is planning to reopen the schools and colleges as soon as possible. And then as the education system is collapsing during the kind of Holocaust, so he's comparing it with the Holocaust, then is government is taking risk for the third waves, and if whether it is going to make a hindrance in the process of implementation of national education policy. So that is her question. And then there is another question also for Dr. Neetu that ma'am, recently we saw that 10th and 12th students were given marks without exam. Okay, so tell us if we can have any positive or negative effect on future entrances or competitive exams. That's a quite innocent question on the part of an undergraduate student. So he wants to know whether 10th and 12th students were given marks without exams. So if it is going to have any positive or negative impacts on their future aspirations of life.
With respect to the positive and negative aspects, like we have already started seeing some news. I don't know how far it is true that a company has
sorry to intervene, Dr. Neetu. Your screen is quite dark now.
Yeah. Just give me. Just a second. Yeah.
We need to see you in an illuminated way. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's fine, I suppose.
Yes.
It's quite evening, that's why. Okay, so I don't know how far this news is true, but the repercussions have already coming at place. I have seen one advertisement by some bank that this batch 10, 12 pass student, please do not apply. That is one repercussion. But the other one is, I don't know why we are so fascinated with marks and everything. You like passing a student there if they have attended all the classes, and like even some percentage of classes is sufficient to gain you a place in the society, that you are an educated one. Just because you have a vocational knowledge does not make you an educated. There's a difference between literate and educated person. So there's one thing, but it's the whole system of passing you with like 90 and above marks are very questionable. That is one issue. Like everybody is getting that marks. That's very skewed on my part, because they will go and face certain interviews and they will be like, you have scored 96%, so the expectations will be quite high. And if you're not able to answer, the reputation of yours as well as the education institution you have passed out will be at stake. So that is a general request on my part, that even if the marking is low, it's good. That's a genuine marking. Don't give them marks as if they're the topper of the institutions, and they will be facing the hurdles in future. So you are making the situation worse for them only. And Dr. Das, what was the second question? Like, what is the positive and negative? I already said. And what the other question was?
The other question was, government is planning to reopen the school and colleges as soon as possible. So the education system has quite collapsed during this period of the pandemic. And then whether government is taking risk for the third waves, and then whether it is going to make a hindrance in the way of implementation of NEP. That's the question.
I'll speak on my university. What's the situation here? Because opening of Delhi University has opened some of the classes, I think, and they have started calling up the students also. But the third wave, as Dr. Panda will be more in a position to say how far is it to come to at place. But ours is like law students are huge in number. And in the hostels, they have been provided 4 students in one room. The rooms are quite big. And now if they cut the number to 50%, only 50% will be getting education. So it's highly indefinite on the part of my university that they will open up. If they will open up, they will definitely make alternate situations. So opening of the students and dealing with the situation will require certain infrastructural facilities and construction on the part of the universities. And also the question is, in this era of economic crisis, how much ready these educational institutions and the government are to construct new infrastructural facilities to accommodate the students. So one factor is contingent upon the other factor. There cannot be an absolute yes or no answer to your question. It has to be taken into a holistic approach. You know, it's a yes, COVID, everybody is vaccinated now. Educational institutions will be open. You still have to maintain that 2 inch ki duri, like sir was saying, 2 gaz ki duri, suraksha hai zaruri. Like the jargons are relevant. Don't take them lightly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So thank you, Dr. Neetu. And now there is a unique situation when a panelist desires to ask a question to another panelist, and he has made me the bridge. So I don't know whether I should be fortunate or I should feel disappointed with the shy doctor.
We already have a doctor in the panel, so he can vouch for most of the things. Education and health and policy cannot be separated. They have to go side by. Yeah, right. That's why, we should congratulate you to have chosen such a topic, which is so contemporary and relevant at the same time.
Okay, so this is the question by the shy young Dr. Panda for for Dr. Roy, that there is upcoming UP elections coming up. So in few days, the COVID third wave is knocking the door. How do you see the political implications in the upcoming days?
That's an interesting.
Oh God, I would rather also want to know what he thinks. Okay, First of all, the elections are in February, to my knowledge. And the thing is that what specifically is your question? What is the specific question?
The COVID third wave is knocking the door, and how do you see the political implications?
Yeah, political implication. If you go and see the newspaper, Modi ji declared that UP has done the best. Yogi ji has, managed COVID-19. It's a model form, and Yogi ji has
according to
oxygen
the Prime
crisis.
Minister, is the most vibrant state of India, being the largest.
Of course, and Man Ki Baat 15th August. How can you skip that? And then the third point is that Yogi ji, when this oxygen crisis was taking place, Yogi ji said that there is no oxygen crisis, and if journalists they report fake news about oxygen crisis, so उसपे NSA लगा दिया जाएगा. So.
Yes.
So with all that, there is and whatever these election trends say, so the government is doing quite well, and by the way, I wanted to ask you a question because you are a doctor. Do you really think that elections take place on the basis of COVID-19, like whatever West Bengal election took place, Bihar elections took place, there was whatever elections, you think that in India any election has ever taken place on any of the development, health or education, yardsticks? So it doesn't, it's irrelevant, they're not irrelevant, but yes, these things are used as popular mode of criticizing. These are good for arguments, but I don't think that these have any impact on the election directly. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am did point out a thing that UP government has done excellent in handling the COVID, but you just go and ask any doctor what
Modi ji said, I didn't say, Modi ji said.
Okay.
She has quoted.
Okay,
It's
okay.
right. She has
Sorry.
quoted. You cannot tell that it was her statement. She has rightly quoted.
Neetu, you were saying something and I interrupted. I didn't.
No, I was saying that she is rightly quoting our Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. None of the statements
Yogi
are
ji
hers.
and Modi ji.
Right.
So what I think is that you just go and ask any doctor working in COVID setup in UP. He or she will tell that what is the real picture. See, there are a lot of things actually. The death is unprecedented. The infectivity rate is too high. So if you are asking at one hand to maintain 2 gaj ki duri, wearing mask and doing hand sanitization,
but Panda ji, आपका सवाल ही गलत है. Election और COVID का कोई रिश्ता नहीं है.
And Panda sir, for God's sake, do not name any of the doctors who are citing these situations. At least save their lives.
I'm sure most of them are.
Okay, so maybe apart from the kind of cordiality we have developed on the digital platform, I'd like to request I'd like to request some of my colleagues who are present with us to ask some questions so that we can also represent our presence here. Dr. Mishra was with us some time before, but I think he left. So Mr. Bikram sir, he is a bright faculty amongst us. So while traveling, he's asking, he's not asking rather, he's appreciating. So I hope he's with us and he can ask a question as he's an enthusiastic listener. So Mr. Bikram sir, are you with us? Because he has written the maximum in the dialogue box, appreciating everyone with their specific talks and their excerpts of the talk, and then he has congratulated everyone. So I think Mr. Bikram sir, are you with us? If not, then I would also like to request other faculty colleagues of me and some of the teachers who are also part of the university. If any of you would like to ask a question, maybe within a frame of 5 minutes, we can wrap up all the questions because we have reached at a point where we're going to be, it's going to be 6:25. So maybe we can wrap up in 5 minutes. So I request some of our colleagues, if you are interested or if you have any genuine query, then you can ask a question. You can switch on your audio and video and ask us. Anyone, please?
I want to ask a question.
Okay. Yes, sir. Please ask.
Our state, the 10+2+3 system already implemented in the India, so many states. But our state, I feel, till date, that 10+2+3 system not properly to handle in our state, because the +2 till date, the +2 schools included in the colleges. So my question from the to Nitu madam, now our center already implemented to new education policy, NEP. So how it is possible to implement the NEP in our state? Now the NEP NEP for the children come from the nursery level in our government schools. So government has not to develop their infrastructures and teaching staffs in our state. How it is possible?
Apart from the question, you have rightly raised the concern also that since the infrastructural facilities are not as place, then how are you going to implement this national education policy? So I've already stated that the further policies are needed to implement this policy. These are just documented versions that these things are proposed, and some of the portions has been implemented through UGC guidelines. At entry, re-entry, you can leave the course and then come at a certain point of time after having another degree. That thing. And with respect to Odisha, that if, like 12th is not carried out in college, in schools, it's carried out in colleges, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm not able
12th is a part of junior college also, and in the schools of CBSE and ISCE mediums, it's a part of the school, and then it's a part of the junior colleges, the intermediate level, some of the junior colleges.
Yes. For example, I also, when I was doing my 12th, I did from a college, and after I did it from a college, I also did it from a college, and after that 10th and 12th were removed from the college portion, and it was inducted into the school system. Okay, so I don't think that if it is a breakage, for example, 10, 12, then you have to take admission into graduation. It's not a thorough 5 years like after 10th. So I don't know how it's going to make a difference whether it's being taught in schools or colleges. I'm not, like, if I'm not able to justify that, I'm asking, like, if there is any possible lacuna that you see that, because anyways it's breakage after 12th, whether it is in school or colleges. 12th ke baad break hoke bhi you go to take graduate courses.
No, my question for the nursery students. My question for the nursery students, not are in the part of the government schools till date, but the NEP is given the nursery means the age of 3 of the child to admitted in the government schools and to take the education in the government schools. So that is the essential for education system, the teachers and infrastructures, and that too the essential for the government schools. And so many primary schools closed due to the less of students in our state. The 2 to 3 years continuously, near to 2000 or above primary schools is closed, and that also the attached to 2 to 3 kilometers distance from one village to another village, and that nursery students, how it is possible? The 3 years students are going to the 3 to 4 kilometers. It is possible. And
No.
but the government to only to give the paperwork, and every day they can give the paperwork, and not the teaching atmosphere. Only they can give the paperwork and do the paperwork.
Right, sir. Right. You have rightly raised this concern. And also we are talking about the technological deprivations that the students are facing apart from this. The situation that you are describing is in an offline situation, where the students have to travel so far to go to a school, right? But at present situation, we are not even sure about the online means of education that will be ensured to them or not. So it's really a grave policy matter, and we cannot say much about it. Yes, the government has to take this into consideration, that unless and until the induction of this category of students, whether it's in offline mode or online mode, is to be ensured, the national education policy will not do justice what it is intended to be. Right.
Now the online education in our state especially, the only 10 to 12% students are capable family to supply the mobiles or any laptops or anything, and they are able to take the online classes. But more than 86%, more than the 87%, the students are unable to get chance to get the online education.
Right, sir. Rightly said, sir. So there has to be massive funding from the government, and since we are not in the government, we can just give them constructive suggestions that massive funding needs to be required for all the facilities.
Our government to only to spend the money, and the only the middle persons take the money.
Right.
Not to come the ground level. Not to develop the ground level. Only the money spend the middle persons and the higher persons.
Yes, sir. You have rightly raised this issue of corruption. We all agree on that. You have rightly raised the question. I mean, it was not a question and answer session. We got enlightened that these are also the issues that are existing. We did not point out. Like corruption is a big issue. Yeah, you're right.
I feel our country already 75 years Independence Day today is celebrate, but our education system in our country not to develop till date.
Yes, rightly, sir. We can all agree on that. The education system has not advanced as
sorry for the kind intervention. Sorry for the kind intervention, and I think I'm getting repeated reminders on the part of our principal, sir, that we need to wrap up the session. We have crossed the limit of the time. So, anyways, thank you all the participants, and then all my colleagues, my dearest students for their participation, and then all the distinguished panelists. So I would like to request our principal, sir, to switch on his video and audio so that he can impress upon us regarding any concluding remarks for a minute, and then we will close the session with.
Thank you, Hemant Babu.
Thank you.
The time is over now. I thanks to all the guests, participants, my colleagues, and declare the webinar is over.
Okay, so thank you so much, sir. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, now I would like to request Ms. Gayatri Pradhan to deliver the vote of gratitude. If Ms. Gayatri is amongst us, she can deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the department. Gayatri, are you there with us? Ms. Gayatri Pradhan. If you are amongst us, then you can conclude with a vote of thanks. You are requested to present the vote of thanks for us.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible and visible both. Yes, please continue.
Good evening to everyone present here with warm greetings. It gives me an immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks to all dignitaries on behalf of this esteemed institution. Although we have reached at the terminal point of today's webinar, albeit this could be a new beginning to learn more and strive for unique threshold of acquiring knowledge for life. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, I would like to express my first string of gratitude to our Chief Patron, Dr. Bijaya Maharana sir, for his encouragement to organize a webinar at a crucial time when physical connectivity has become a myth and digital reality is the buzz. The next string is for our dear colleagues, staff members, guest participants for their presence, involvement in this session, and extracting out possible learning outcomes from the distinguished panelists. The greatest flow of gratitude goes to our eminent panelists, Dr. Roy ma'am, Dr. Panda sir, Dr. Neetu ma'am, for different strata of professional activity who, with their acquired knowledge and devoted time, became the pillars of digital knowledge sharing endeavor. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and everyone's thought for being with us. The future time will compel us to stay connected with you and development more assemblies. The gentlest and encouragement string of thank you goes to our loving students and from amongst them Miss Khushi and Mr.Alekha, specifically for their participation and making the conjecture of deliberation vibrant in an effective way. Your learning and creative involvement will always remain our strength. In the next phase, I would also like to thank our distinguished academic colleagues, administrator, well-wisher of Sambalpur University, and media friends for covering this webinar and cooperative support for us during this attempt. Ultimately, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the sincere effort, immense contribution, and dedication of the head of the Department of Political Science, Dr. Hemant Kumar Das sir, for conceptualizing this idea and carrying forward the activities of the department. Thank you. Sincere regards to everyone involved in this digital convergence again. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gayatri, and my sincere regards and thanks to Maharana sir for pushing me to conduct this webinar. I hope our institutions under the aegis of Sambalpur University will be able to invite the guests again for some other deliberations, and maybe we can deliver some other webinars in an interdisciplinary way by some other departments. Maybe from active colleagues like Mr. Bikram Kumar and Mr. Rakesh Chandra Sahu from the Department of Commerce, Anthropology and all. They are quite interested to organize a seminar very soon. So hopefully we'll engage with all the panelists and some other distinguished guests also very soon. And on behalf of the Political Science Department, I think we have learned something, and I would also like to thank two of my students for their bright presence here. And thanks again to Principal Sir, all the panelists for being with us. And then I think as declared officially by Maharana Sir, this webinar is closed. Thank you. Thank you everyone. And I hope we'll be connected again digitally very soon on different